Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program, Jim Becker, who is CEO at Becker Logistics, and Prasad Gollapalli, who is the founder and CEO of Trucker Tools. And today we're going to talk about freight brokers. How do you map and manage your digital transformation journey? Now, the question, why is digital transformation important? Well, that question was answered loud and clear in 2020, right? Because you can't scale and grow your business profitably, and you can't meet the ever-changing needs of your customers unless you do so. But how do you get started on this journey? What is the destination? And how do customers, carriers, and employees influence and guide the direction of that journey? Well, those are the main questions we're going to address in today's episode, and it's great to have Jim and Prasad on the program to share their insights and advice on this topic. So Jim, Prasad, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much, Adrian.
Nice to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
So Jim, you're a first-time guest here on Talking Logistics, and I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with you and with Becker Logistics. I know you're very active on LinkedIn, but in case some folks may not be familiar with the company, before we kind of dive into this topic, why don't you tell us briefly a little bit about Becker Logistics and your operations there?
Yeah, no problem. We've been in business now for 24 years. This May of 2021 will be the 24-year anniversary. So we've been based in the Chicagoland area, but we then opened up to 6-7 offices throughout the United States and Canada. And we are primarily a freight broker, and 80% of what we do is mostly food grade materials, either finished, frozen, canned, bottled products, ingredients, as well as the paper components that go along with that, or steel. And we do in and out of Chicago, point to point throughout the whole United States, out of Canada, into Canada, LTL, flatbed, drayage, last mile, as well as intermodal and air freight.
Great. Well, 24 years, congratulations. That's a great milestone. And obviously, even though core focus there in that industry, very diverse, set of modes and services there. So to get into the topic now, I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with that famous Yogi Berra line that if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else, right? Right. So what is your digital transformation destination, Jim? In terms of where Becker Logistics is going. Where are you trying to get to?
Well, that's a great question. Back in 2010, we were about a $5 million business in top line revenue. Last year, we did $73 million in top line revenue. And in 2021, right now, based off the last 2 quarters, we'll be well over $100 million in top line revenue. And as we look at human capital and how do we do that? Do we go ahead and do an arbitrage overseas? Or do we go ahead and continue to grow by hiring more and more people and bringing them on? Well, the scalability, you were so right on, Adrian. As we go ahead and go forward, do we go ahead and scale with that? Or what do we try to do to try and help that growth as we go along? So last year we did about 2% digital freight matching. And in 2021, we're currently at, after Q1, about 5% digital freight matching. Our goal by the end of 2021 is to be at 20% DFM. And as we go into the next year, 2022, we want to really bring that to about 40%, maybe 50%. By 2025, we really want to be about 90% DFM. So if we can have that and just manage by the exception, it's going to really help us with that substantial growth that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's impressive because you're right. I think it's when you're trying to scale your operations and not only just scale, but scale profitably, that's always been the old model, if you will, is to just throw more people at it, right? Right. Yeah, add more people. But I think the recognition is that today that's not that's not the most progressive or innovative way to move forward. And I think even in 2020, obviously we all learned that in this environment where everyone is hopefully we've turned a corner, but a lot of folks are still working from home, right? So that's added another layer of complexity there in terms of the human element to all this, right?
Yeah, the changing with the pandemic, you're so right on, Adrian. we now have probably 90% of all of our employees working from home. Matter of fact, that opened up an opportunity where we could hire from more states and really just building that without having that platform here in the office and having other offices all over. We just closed down another office that we really didn't have to have anymore. So that really helps with our COGS as we're moving forward, and it helps us to be more profitable. So, you were so on when you were talking about scaling up, and that led us when we were in a growth mode that profitability would be somewhat diminished because we were hiring on so many people, and that scale up, that ramp up to get those people to a profitability level would be over 6 months. And so we worked on our training, our learning and development aspect of it, and implementing, a learning management system with our our 3PL LMS tool that really helped us with that. But when you're looking at everything, you have to be that visionary as a CEO to really say, where are we going, right? Just, what you said about Yogi Berra, if you don't know where you're going to end up somewhere else. I don't want to end up somewhere else, and I'm leading the bus, and I've got a whole bunch of employees and customers and carriers going with us, and I want to take them to the right destination.
That's a great point. I'm going to get back to you on that point in terms of employees and customers and the role that they play. But before we get that, Prasad, just to bring you into the conversation, and you and I have talked, at various times over the past couple of years about all these great changes that have been happening in the industry. But obviously, Jim and Becker Logistics is already on that journey, and they've got a clearly defined destination of where they want to head to. But for brokers that are just getting started, with digital transformation, I mean, how should they map out their journey? Because sometimes it could be very daunting, right? And it seems like it could be so far away. I mean, what are perhaps some key milestones that they should define and work towards along the way?
What Jim said is absolutely right. Having a big plan is very important. But for those who are starting off fresh, the biggest question is, as a 3PL or a broker, the first thing one should ask is, what's my digital strategy look like? What's the purpose of this platform, right? Typically, that purpose should start with, the two things that you both have mentioned. One is scalability. The other one is profitability. These are the two important things for brokerages. How fast can you increase your scale, and how well you can lower your variable cost of covering a load, because that defines your margins. Then the third one, in one of the things that Jim said, I'll connect to that point, is carriers, right? Typically, a digital platform helps brokers keep their carriers for longer periods of time. So they're getting more out of that capacity. So that solves the main purpose why brokers are in the space, right? So brokers and 3PLs, they're aggregating this capacity from the long tail of carriers, providing that to the shippers. Otherwise, shippers would have difficulty reaching out to this. So that sustained, consistent capacity comes from having these carriers for longer periods of time rather than one and done. So a digital platform can help them typically. So if you're a broker, and if your goals are, I want to scale up faster without increasing human power, I want to lower my margins or a variable cost of covering a load and increase my margins, and I want to keep my carriers for longer period of time. So carrier adoption or carrier relationship, right? If these are the goals, then that drives the journey, right? But like with every journey, it has to be done with dedication and one step at a time, rather than you're not going to go from not being a digital platform adopter to a fully adopted person overnight.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, even in Jim, in kind of characterizing your journey here, I mean, you said, you weren't going from 0 to 100%, in 1 year. You kind of recognize that it's going to take, various steps, to getting to that ultimate goal. So now tie in back what Prasad just said. He brought in kind of the role of carriers, and that being one of the kind of the pillars, if you will, in terms of the milestones. And you brought up in terms of driving the bus, but there's a lot. There are people on that bus along with you. So the bottom line is that there are a lot of stakeholders in this industry, right? You've got your customers, you've got carriers, and you've got your employees. I mean, how do these different stakeholders guide and influence your digital transformation journey?
Oh, that's a great point. Internally, we've got our employees and we've got our shareholders. the CEO, the managers, executives, all of those are essential, and it has interest in the company and the profitability, the scalability. As we grow, our valuation changes, right? Well, externally, we have our customers, we have our carriers, we have our suppliers. As we're entering in more on the digital aspect of things, it's really changing our relationship with each person, internally and externally. It's making our job for our employees a lot easier, smoother, and that relationship with our customers, they're happier with us as we're increasing our DFM as we move forward. And the people that aren't, look at the transportation topics top 150. We used to be number 73 at $80 million. And today we're 105 at $73 million. So we're kind of in a consolidation pattern as we're moving. But the larger companies, the top 100, the top 150, are getting larger and larger and larger, which is making it harder to get in there. And there's certain things that we've automated, right? So we've automated so much as we've moved forward from our accounting practices, our back office. And the next thing is, how do we get more into that funnel? And as we get more into that funnel, how do we get that to be systematic, flowing through? And that relationship with those stakeholders, internally and externally, are essential as we grow.
No, a lot of great points there. And, I would think, from the customer side, you hear from every shipper, right? We want visibility, we want data, and as much as you can automate that, the better. And then obviously, help us find the capacity we need when we need it at the cost that we need, right? So that's on the shipper side. And then, the carriers are obviously a big part of that in terms of, making it easy to work with them and being able to keep their trucks moving. And then from the employees, I mean, you talked about making their job easier. I mean, is there any kind of, fear or resistance to say, hey, are we going to get replaced with technology? You hear all this buzz from around AI and technology and machine learning and robots. Are we going to become, displaced by, computers? I mean, is there any fear or discussions that take place along that front?
For me, no, I don't see a fear on that. I just see as, 5 years ago, from that 5-year point, we grew over 1,000%. And out of that just came a lot of capital that we paid out, and our profitability was diminished. In order to be profitable and do the things that we need to do, right, especially bootstrapped, us going from in the last 24 years and doing an acquisition and now in acquisition mode again, it doesn't come naturally. You have to build up those proceeds and that capital to really do what you need to do. It's not sustainable if we continue as we go from 100 million to 250 million to 500 to a billion. It's not sustainable if we don't have that capital. And the only way to do that, as you do a regression analysis, you really need to say, we need to do this better, smarter. And the only way is to do it DFM. If we can do it DFM, and when we do it DFM, it allows that ease as we go out. And those people that are here, they're not going away. Our employees are safe. They're going to be managing by those exceptions. As our customers are putting more and more demands on us on either volume or like the one-offs, our people can really mitigate and manage those, helping our customers be happy and satisfied. And as they grow, we're growing with them.
Yeah, I love that point. And I think that, what I often find is sometimes when there is some resistance to technology or fear of technology, and then they see the benefits. And then you say, if you were to run an experiment and say, we're gonna take the technology away. It was a mistake. They'll probably, kill you because they'll say, no, we don't want to go back to the old ways, right? Because they find that the work is much more, streamlined and automated, and that yes, they're working on the things that are truly value add versus non-value add, and overall their enjoyment of what they do increases. So Prasad, back to you, kind of keeping with this kind of journey, motif, if what you pack for a journey is also, important. So from a technology standpoint, I mean, what technology tools and capabilities must freight brokers, have in the digital transformation backpack?
That's the most important thing is the technology there, right? But I think Jim covered the processes, people, the two other big important parts of this journey. Now, when you evaluate technology, I think the first and foremost thing is for a digital platform, there's a lot of noise. We live in a space, where there are a lot of buzzwords now. Jim's smiling at it because he's probably heard a lot more in this journey, and we spoke about it quite a few times. A lot of buzzwords. I think we got to really be able to take away the noise away and focus on what is the true value of a digital platform. So in my viewpoint, I think a digital platform is one that has real information, not a lot of noise. So typically the biggest concerning thing in transportation in our segment is every system has a lot of noise that most of the companies like, Jim's company, as they are growing bigger and bigger, they have to fight and weed out all this noise, not having real loads, not having where the trucks are actually available or where the truck is when you're using the visibility, or not getting the documents back on time, like 4 or 5, days or maybe weeks. Right? We're dealing with stale and noise. So a digital platform is one that has true information, real-time information. The second part is digital platforms should have the live connectivity. So when you are a broker, you need to be able to connect with the carrier on a live connection. That is the most powerful thing, as opposed to, let's say if I send an email, I don't know if you got it or if you're reading it. That's the reason why people are, using, text messages. And now we're going into, I can see when you saw my text, right? Kind of a thing. That live connection is what makes, because these are not one-off conversations. When a broker gives a load to the carrier, it's not about, hey, here is a load, deal with it. There's a load, more has to come back. Have you arrived? Have you picked up this load? What's the weight of the load? What's the bill of lading? Can I get the document back so that I can process my information with the shipper? All of it is tied. So that live connection. If a platform doesn't have these two, then they're just basically, just noise in the space, because they're adding to the troubles here. They're taking us away from that. So when brokers are evaluating, these are the two things that they should look at. Oftentimes we live in a space because brokers aggregate the long tail of carriers. Mobile technologies have a huge value or impact in this, because they are very easy for the carriers to carry out.
I love what you said there, and I think you're right. I mean, sometimes, we live in an era right now where we're probably generating more data and have access to more data than ever before. But sometimes a lot of that data could be just noise or distracting. And unless you're able to, convert that data into insights, it's not that much value. And unless you're able to get rid of the data that is not adding any value, to simplify, what you're looking at and what you need, I think that's critically important as well. And I think, when you talked about kind of looking at it from the life cycle standpoint, the end-to-end, perspective, and being able to streamline, automate, across the board, I think that's, important too, as opposed to kind of just, in a very ad hoc or point manner. So Jim, back to you. I mean, and you kind of already shared a little bit about, where you're going, what your destination is, but as you continue to move forward, I mean, what's next for you in this journey, and how do partners like Trucker Tools, help you get there?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you go through digitalization, it's the process of transitioning from analog to digital, right? So we've already seen that in transportation and 3PL. And the process of making that digitalization information available and working for your business, right? The longer you look at the data, the more of a story it tells you. And then trying to get to that digital transformation, which is getting to the point that you were talking about. It's the journey and applying that digitalization transformation to your business so that you can see it transform the relationship that you have with your customers and your carriers, right? With Prasad, what we're able to do is do the digitalization on the tracking, which has helped so much, know exactly where our loads are and get that visibility to our customers. You know, in transformation, it's the alternation. I guess you could say it's planned alteration and into the next world. And sometimes you can't see what that is. You got to shape that, like say, this is where we're going. And when we can go there, what we're looking at next is not only from the DFM being able to match said carriers and almost like in an AI, look at that predictive analysis. Right now, we've already gone through matching who's already handled these loads in history time here at Becker Logistics. And then now we need to quantify that and say on a predictive analysis on some type of R value that we can say predictively in October, the rates are going to be here and seasonality. These carriers are usually doing this lane for us and being able to predict that in the future and saying, hey, we have this capacity already taken care of. We need 5 more trucks per day on this lane in October when we're in April. When we can look at that and then also be able to feed an RFP into it and get that data back in minutes and then manage by exception and have that predictive analysis to say, most likely that confidence level that these rates are good are above 95%. If we can get to that level, or better yet, when we get to that level, that transformation will actually have occurred and we'll be living that dream and we'll be closer to that 90% of digitally freight matched freight.
You know, as you were talking, and I'm an engineer by background. I started my career as a material science engineer. So I love numbers. You were talking about, you know, our values and, you know, of course, all this predictive analytics is all mathematics and everything else. But it struck me that, you know, I've been doing this now for over 22 years in terms of looking at logistics service providers and technology and everything else, how far we've come as an industry. Because to have an executive at a logistics company talking about predictive analytics, talking about, you know, automated freight matching, I think would have been, you know, I probably would have lost that bet 22 years ago if someone made a bet with me that this is where we would be in 2021. So I think it's exciting, you know, and I think it's a testament that, you know, unless your peers in the industry are thinking the way you're thinking and the others that are kind of on this journey as well, it's going to be very difficult for them to, you know, continue to succeed, continue to grow and scale everything we've talked about today, because it truly is, on the one hand, this remains a people-oriented business, right? People aren't going away. It's a relationship business, and relationships matter, relationships with carriers, relationships with shippers, relationship with your technology partners, you know, all the stakeholders. It's still a very much a people-driven industry, but man, you can't discount the role that technology is playing as well. And if you don't invest in that area, it's going to be very difficult, right?
Absolutely. You know, you bring up a really good point. As we're in acquisition mode and we're looking for 2 targets this year, I'm looking at and meeting with a lot of business owners that didn't follow along in that technology. You know, as TensorFlow and Python and R are out there, you know, I started out in computer programming. That's what I was supposed to go into in the early 90s. And looking at this now and how that is so relevant to what we're doing. And if you're not on these platforms, either with a third party or developing your own, you're going to be left behind. And it's going to be so much harder. And that's where you're seeing that shift. And that shift is happening. I mean, you know, for us being ranked at 105th at 73 million, you know, I'm thinking to myself, is next year, you know, 2021, are we going to be ranked 105th at 120 million? Is my question. And what about all those other people that are at 10 or 15 or 20 million? Where are they now ranked? I mean, if you go back in history, there's been what, 35,000 MC numbers for freight brokerage? only 150 companies have ever made it past that $100 million threshold, right? I mean, right now, things are going quicker and quicker and quicker. And if you're not in the Internet of Things and you're not following that journey, you will be left behind. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I would
Go ahead,
add one
Prasad.
thing to, I think what Jim said is absolutely right. What we are seeing is, the brokerages, 3PLs that have adopted to technology or adopting to technology are seeing a growth. I mean, the last 1 year, I can say the growth has been significantly different than those who didn't adopt to technology. And that gap is widening by day. Like, I think Jim is dead on that I think the more you adopt to technology, the more you have to adopt to technology. It's a nice cycle too, because you're growing. You're no more, so, like Jim said, he's no longer a 100 million brokerage. Now he's 400 and still trying to expand to become $1 billion, right? It's all in the size at this point. And one, I think I'll also attribute to our overall economy is growing. Our overall economy is growing, so the opportunities are opening up. And this is one of the key points a lot of people have mentioned to me is there is a structural change coming from shipper going directly to the carrier to shipper going to the broker. The broker market, broker freight has been consistently increasing. So over a period of time, I feel like the broker space is going to play a bigger role in that relationship.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's always been a subject of debate, right? Because I think a lot of folks say, well, brokers are just middlemen, right? Or just but they play an important role, right? They're more than just a matchmaker, if you will. And to your point, if they would have been disintermediated, it would have happened already. And I think that there's a reason why that hasn't happened yet. So as a way to wrap up, I mean, this has been a great conversation. So Jim, I'll start with you, and then Prasad, you can add your thoughts. I mean, what is the biggest lesson learned so far for you, Jim, as you've been on this journey and as you think ahead towards the future? What biggest lesson learned so far?
I would say the biggest lesson learned is don't be afraid to invest the capital into the digital wave. Because if you don't invest the capital and invest into the future, you won't have a future. You truly won't.
And that's a great point. I think, to add to that, you talk about invested capital, but it's arguably even, the hurdle is even lower today than it was 20 years ago, right? Because you've got these software as a service model and cloud solutions. So in many ways, you go back 20 years and a TMS would cost, $1 million and then $2 million to implement, right? And, virtually no one can afford that, but the very biggest of the shippers and the 3PLs. But today that hurdle has come down significantly. So I view it as there's really no excuse from a cost standpoint, because there are a lot of, quote unquote, affordable solutions out there. It's just getting over that hurdle.
Yeah.
And Prasad, your thoughts, biggest lesson learned?
I think what Jim said is absolutely right. There's no reason not to. I mean, you have to invest in technology. Where I would go and say is, for our audience listening, 3PLs and brokers, don't hodgepodge technology. Have a clear mindset of where you want to go. Like, Jim has a very good roadmap, right? He has a clear goal of where he wants to go. Have a clear goal of where your organization should be in 2 years, 5 years from now. Back connect those dots and say, I need a technology to do XYZ. And don't hodgepodge technologies. The reason I say that is, at the end of the day, your technology is also your connectivity, unless it is your own TMS, your connectivity with either your carriers or shippers. Now, it's very important on the carrier side, because their strength drives your strength as a 3PL to your customer who is a shipper. So provide a technology that you can keep a bigger group of carriers onboarded, keep them happy and profitable. So I think that is the key thing in my viewpoint.
Great. Well, Jim, Prasad, as I always say at the end of our episodes, we always just manage to scratch the surface here, but you both provide some great insights and advice and food for thought. So Jim, Prasad, thank you both for making the time to be with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Adrian. Appreciate it. And Prasad, great always to be with you, my friend. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Always enjoy these calls. And Jim, thanks for joining this.
And I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the Trucker Tools website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or a comment for Jim or Prasad, you can post it there. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.